Okay, so let's talk about render passes and compositing. Unfortunately, this isn't quite as easy as ZBrush's Photoshop plugin, where you just hit a button and it assembles a bunch of stuff for you. But I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. If we look at the Arnold render view here, I'm just continuing basically where I left off from before. What you see is under the File menu, you have a bunch of options. So it's basically if you want to do like a multi-layer EXR format, that will have a bunch of render passes packaged into one file that you can bring into an actual compositing package like After Effects, Nuke, anything like that. I don't know if there's an easy way to reverse engineer that in Photoshop, unfortunately. But so what I've been doing instead is I will just go to the file, save image, and then I'll specify this as like a TIFF here. So it's pretty smart. Like you can just call it whatever, like cat render, and this is a beauty pass, right? So beauty pass, and then I'll call it like a TIFF. TIFF just because it's going to be uncompressed. I don't want any JPEG compression on anything right now. So I'll save that. And then from here, the only reason why I knew it was a beauty pass is because in the render pass drop down, you see beauty. So technically in Arnold it's called an AOV, which is an arbitrary output variable, and it's not going to be called a render pass. And I'm kind of glossing over a lot of stuff just to make things easier, but you can scroll down and you can see the available AOVs that I've set up for this scene, which is a general AO pass, a material ID pass, Z depth, which actually does not display correctly unless you reduce the gamma, which is like, say, if I take this down to -10, and then you get something that looks more like a Z depth, a proper Z depth pass. This is a little hard to use though, and we'll get into that a little bit here, but then I can go back down. We can look at the albedo, which is the base color. I don't have any coat. Then we have the diffuse, and there's no emission, and then a lot of these we may not actually need. So specular, of course, is going to be very useful. I don't have any subsurface scattering. Well, I guess I do. I lied. So we can use these in a number of different ways. And what I would do is I go down the list and see what I can, what appeals to me, and then I can do like a save image, and we'll call this. I'll click on that original one here, just so it preserves that file extension for me, this file format, and we can call this cat render AO, and etc. Right? So I can keep going down, and I can save these out. So what I've done is in a different file, I've just saved out a bunch of AOVs for the wrestler guy that I had demoed. And some of this stuff you're not going to see a whole lot, just because of how things have been set up in the shaders. So it's not always so straightforward, unfortunately. But I'll show you what I did. So this is the composites, the final composites. It's very heavy-handed depth of field thing happening here, which let's just turn it off here. And then if we turn off everything, turn off the passes, and this is like the base render, and then just me pushing it a little bit more with those passes here. Since we're doing it in Photoshop and we're not doing like Nuke or After Effects, I think the amount of stuff that we do here is going to be totally up to you. How crazy you want to go. If you want to do some photo bashing on top, that's again your decision. But I'm going to talk about how I composited this here. So what I did was I took the beauty pass. So let's bring this all over here. So I started with this. I dragged this into Photoshop. It makes it opens a new window, right? And then what I did from there was, I selected everything else. So let's deselect that BD. I'm going to turn off, I'm not going to select the Z depth because it's kind of tricky. I'll get into that later. And then let's deselect the actual PSD that I work with. And if I click and drag these into this open window here, or if I drag it into this documents, basically it'll try and place it correctly. I just have to hit enter each time, and it'll place it the way it's supposed to go. In this case, I have a bunch of stuff that I don't necessarily need, right? So like I have a normal pass, and I have like I forgot what position pass, and I don't need these, but I saved it out anyway. But that's fine. Let's go ahead here. And then this is my scene here. I'm gonna make a new layer in the back, and we'll just to showcase a few things here. What I could just do is, let's say, I'll just control click on that beauty pass layer, and then let's go ahead and put all these into one group. So I'll select everything, I'll hit Control G to group it all, and then I'll hit the mask icon and I'll mask it here. So I use a selection from my beauty pass to create this cutout, and as you can see, if I make a new layer behind everything, and then we do like some color, like maybe I'll just fill it with black. It gets cut out, right? So I just want to separate my subject from my background. However you want to do that, it's up to you. And then I'm going to turn these on individually and see what I can do with it, with each one here. Shadow mats. So let's take a look. What did I do on this file exactly? So I used the specular direct, not the indirect, and then the subsurface, and then the specular itself here. Okay. I think honestly, if you just turned in a render that looked like this without this blue background, I think that would look pretty decent. But this is just for those of you who want to take your presentation a little bit further. If I use like say the specular pass and then set to like say screen, what? So I think it's not letting me set this to screen. Why is it not letting? Double check here. Okay, specular direct. Okay, so it's not letting me do a few things, and I think that's because we have 32 bits per channel. Just the way I saved it. If we go to 16 bits per channel, I'm going to say don't merge it, and then I should be able to use all these blending modes. I think it's just like one of those color settings. Hopefully I don't have to do it per layer. Okay, I think that set it the entire documents, entire file. Okay, cool. So now I can take this. We can set this screen. Right. So then, if let's make this, just make Photoshop bigger. I can zoom in a little bit, and this is just going to make my character look a little bit, I don't know, more sweaty. Maybe we can tone this down just a little bit. Not sweaty, but maybe like a more oily skin. Something like that here. The ID channel is very handy because I can just magic wand select specific areas, because I don't like how that specular is affecting the cloth. So then I'll just mask that. Right. So now this is with it affecting everything. This is just it affecting the skin, just like that. And one thing I like to do sometimes as well is I'll make like a new layer on top of everything, and then I will do a filter noise, add noise, or okay, let's just fill this with black. Let's just add noise to it. Do something fairly high. I'll set this to like overlay, and then I will clip it to that specular. So now what this does is it kind of simulates some level like skin pores, or it breaks up the specular just a little bit here, just so it's not so clean. From a distance, I think it looks a lot better. So it gives me just a little bit more detail. And then of course I'm also free to mask things out. So maybe the ear, it doesn't make as much sense for that kind of specular to hit the ear. That's fine. And then I think the SSS was something that I could use, because let's say like this by itself is kind of a warm color. So say if I set this to like a color mode itself here, it pushes it away from just having a super warm highlight over everything. Let's get Photoshop to stop being annoying. And then maybe what I'll do is let's take a dark color. Maybe I'll just fill this dark for now. Let's see, what can I fill it with? And then let's take, color sample that. I'll sample that again, and let's go up in the color. And then I'll do a gradient. Something like this. Something that's, we can always change it, it's not a big deal. Okay. And you'll see when I did that though, again, it's affecting everything, which I don't necessarily want. I just want it to affect the skin here. And then, so what I'm going to do again is, let's control click this because I already made a mask. Oh, you know what? Let's get the entire skin in. So I'm going to go back to my Mat ID. I don't even have to have this on. What I can do is have it off, and I know roughly where that face area is. I can click on this and it'll mask everything. So it'll select everything for me without having to turn on visibility on and off all the time. And then we'll go ahead and mask this as well. So now I'm only affecting the skin area. And maybe this is affecting it too much. Maybe I actually like the contrast of having a cool highlights, but I like some of the warmth it gives me elsewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'll double click on this layer and open up the layer style, or we can just right click this and go to blending options as well. Same kind of thing. I'm going to take this value down. So if you look closely at what's happening here, it stops affecting some of these higher values. So then I can hold down Alt and I can break this slider and we can move this a little bit more. This way I am not doing like such an even color adjustment. It's very subtle, but I think it helps. Right, so if you look here, but maybe I like the blue here. So what I'll do is, now that I've done that, I've added the warmth in areas that I want it to be warm. You know what? Let's exaggerate that effect. I'm going to exaggerate it by taking this up again. And then we'll play with the mask here. So I kind of like that. That's super cool rim light there. We can go ahead, kind of do the same thing here. Maybe I'll start with just copying this layer style over. I'll paste this layer style onto here, and then I'll control click on this mask, and then I'll use the same mask here. So this is a super heavy-handed. This is kind of like trying too hard to do like subsurface scattering in that kind of like warm blood flowing under the skin. But I'll keep it for now, just as like a demo of like, hey, this is what you can do with these passes. I think this is enough though. This is getting a little overboard. Um, and then like the albedo, I'm sure I could find some way to use this as a mask to do something, but I don't really have a solid idea. Um, so maybe the next step is doing like an AO pass. So now I'll take the AO, I'll set it to say multiply, and then it'll help just like kind of ground everything. But typically using those black kind of shadows, it kind of makes things a little lifeless. So what I'll do on top of this, I'll do hue saturation here. I'm going to clip this down there, and then we will colorize this and colorize it to something warm again, just because that's how I've been doing it. I'm sure I could find some reason to use this or something cool. Essentially, remember, you can just use these as masks for something. So I could, I don't know, like, who knows? Let's do something kind of wild. What if I did something like this? I'm going to copy this. I'll paste it here. Oops. Let's see. Something like this. And I don't know what can we do? So I'm introducing a different color for the shadows. And what if we did this to like a soft light, or even lighter color? I mean, this is definitely pushing it towards that non-photoreal look. I mean, this is kind of interesting. I think this is something I could use in a different project, not necessarily for this one here. But you get the idea that you can use a lot of these different passes to drive different filter effects or whatever you want to do, more or less. It's just about how creative you get with creating masks and using a bunch of like adjustment layers. And now that we are down to it, so for some reason in Arnold, like if I set this gamma back down to 10, we get this. But every time I save this image out, I still get like a white image. So I'm kind of assuming that it's meant to be extracted in a compositing package with the EXR format, which is not what we're doing. And I think the only way I've gotten this to kind of work is if we open up the TIFF, this ZDEP file by itself, and then I hit Control L to turn on the levels, and I take this value down to 1. This is the only way to get something that looks like a ZDEP channel, and then from there, I think this is like totally not correct because of how I'm basically forcing this value range around this way. It's kind of destructive, but I could technically use this. We can invert this. Okay, so I'm going to go back down to the mode, and I'll turn it down to 16 bits. Let's not merge it. I'll invert this. There we go. And now this will be my ZDEP, and I can copy this here. Call it ZDEP. I'll make a new channel, and I guess I'll copy everything. Oh, let's put it outside of the group here so that it's not cutting out this black part. And then let's paste it here. And I'm only pasting it because we can hide this. I'm going to hit Control A, I'll hit Control Shift C to copy merged, and we'll paste on top here. So now let's go ahead and duplicate this. So I'll work on a duplicate here. If I go to filter, blur, lens blur, now what I can do is hit the source is alpha 1, which is correct. Let's zoom in a little closer, and then we can change this blur distance. Yeah, so now the head's in focus, but the rest isn't. And I hit OK. So on a model like this, it's not going to be too crazy. Like that depth is just not going to be there. But for some of your more elaborate scenes, I think it could be very useful. And it is very subtle, and I think subtle is better anyway. In this version, I didn't even use that. What I just did was just hide this. I just took the blur effect across everything, and I masked out what I wanted to keep. This is a very hacky way of doing it, very manual way of doing depth of field, but this is a little bit more accurate. And then from here, you're completely free to do whatever you want to do with your composite. Alright, I hope that helps, and let me know how it goes.